I've got a question for you. Have you ever found yourself in a room where you felt as if you were the smartest person there? Now, if that happens to you once or twice, good on you. However, if it's a regular occurrence, always happening, I hate to break it to you, but you may be in the wrong room. See, I've always heard that you should surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Maybe they work harder, faster, better, stronger. Did I get that right? So that you can always challenge yourself, aspire to become something greater, to match those that are around you. Now, if you're in an environment where you're continuously learning, continuously growing, it's good in the long run. However, in the short term, you may feel feelings of inadequacy or feel like that you're a fraud in some sense. Don't worry, this is a common phenomenon, something we call imposter syndrome, which is what we're going to talk about today in the Coffeehouse. Welcome back to the Coffeehouse. My name is Vic Bonacci, and I'm a certified Scrum trainer as well as a sometime barista. At least that's what I'd like to be, perhaps. Now, today in the Coffeehouse, as I said, I'd like to cover one of these phenomenon that I regularly come across when I'm working with teams or organizations, other coaches as well. And that's something called imposter syndrome. In fact, when I first heard about it, I tucked it away in the recesses of my brain and thought, if I ever make a toolkit of different models and frameworks and conversational starters, this is going to go into it. Lo and behold, I did start that toolkit. The Agile Coach's Toolkit was created probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I did my first run of this and the other decks, the conversation starters. So I've got a card here for imposter syndrome with a diagram on the back. Now, just by the way, each of these cards, and you can find all of them on the website, agilecoffee.com/toolkit, each of these is something that I use merely as a conversation starter when I'm working with coaches, managers, leaders in an organization. And so imposter syndrome is here because it's something that we all come across. As human beings, it's a common phenomenon where people might feel like they're somehow not up to the task when they look at those around them. They feel feelings of inadequacy, or maybe they feel as if they're fraudulent in some respect. But that's not the case. In fact, according to imposter syndrome, you indeed are competent, and there's even evidence showing that you're competent, but nonetheless, you fall into this trap of feeling somehow not as good as those around you. If you see this on your Scrum team, this is something certainly that you want to address. Let's go ahead and have a look at the website, agilecoffee.com/toolkit. Here we see, once you come to the page, we've got a whole bunch of different models and techniques and definitions and what have you here. Down below on the list, we've got imposter syndrome, so let's just go on there. By the way, if you do have the toolkit card deck with you, you can always see the link below on each card. So here we go. What is imposter syndrome? It says here it's a psychological phenomenon where individuals doubt their accomplishments. They have a persistent fear of being exposed as a fraud and believe that they don't deserve the success or recognition that they have achieved. Does that sound familiar? It's all about having these limiting beliefs. And again, this is something that's common across human beings worldwide throughout history. So don't feel as if this explains you that you're alone here. No, limiting beliefs can affect each and every one of us. Here's what it looks like. If you lack a specific confidence in something, then you're not going to go ahead and try that something. You're not going to take an opportunity. You'll let the opportunity go by. And because you let the opportunity go by, then you don't get an opportunity to learn. And because you're not learning, you're not practicing, you're not building up that competency, and so the cycle continues. Lack of confidence, skip out on the opportunity, don't learn, don't build the competency. So we would like to break that as soon as possible. Let's see what else it says. Despite external evidence of their competence, individuals experiencing imposter syndrome attribute their success to either luck or maybe they believe that others overestimate their abilities. Now, if that's the case for you, what I'd like you to consider is that we're all humans. I mean, I felt that way when I was early in my career. I was always looking around to the left of me, to the right of me, like, why am I here? These people are all geniuses. I was a webmaster back in the 90s. I remember it was my first job in technology or IT. But nonetheless, I'd look to the people to the left of me, and these were all really smart computer programmers using Java, C++, and to the right of me were the COBOL engineers, and they've had years and decades of experience. And who am I? Like this little old guy in the middle. Nonetheless, people came to me because I knew HTML and JavaScript and style sheets inside and out, so I was the expert, although at the time, to be frank, I didn't always feel like I was the expert. And that's okay. So, where did imposter syndrome come from? Because as far as I knew, when I was going through college and starting my career, I'd never heard of that term. Well, let's have a look. It says that the origins of imposter syndrome go back to when the term was first introduced by psychologists Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imes in their 1978 paper titled The Imposter Phenomenon in High-Achieving Women, Dynamics and Therapeutic Intervention. Now, even though these researchers initially studied the phenomenon occurring in high-achieving women, they later found it to be prevalent across genders and various fields. We go on to illustrate it in such a way where on the left hand of this diagram, you feel as if you don't know as much as all of those around you. You only know maybe a small subset of the knowledge that is contained in their lofty brains, right? Instead, take a view on the right-hand side, where you know quite a bit of knowledge. It's specific to your own experiences, your own domain perhaps, and yet people around you also have a similar size or amount of knowledge and skills that they have. Nothing much larger than what you've got, nor much smaller. Approximately the same as per this illustration. Instead of other people knowing everything, what you're seeing is the overlap where you know something as well as they do, but they know more about their situation, their unique skill sets, and you've got an expertise in your own. It's a wonderful illustration, and it really does put it into perspective, I think, because imposter syndrome is something that, we all deal with. So if you're a scrum master or a team leader, how might you work imposter syndrome into your conversations, into the things that you do to manage change in the organization? Well, on the webpage here, I've got some tips for you to try out. First of all, I say start by creating an environment where you can practice seeing values emerge. It's a safe space, and there are people trying things without worrying about the consequences of failure. Get used to working in an environment where there is ambiguity, and then let other people feel that they could be safe as well in such an environment. I'd like to go on and share more of the tips here with you, but right now, let's return back to this idea of imposter syndrome, and maybe how does it interplay with some of the other tools in the toolkit. I've got something else in here called, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you heard of that one? That's where at first you might come on the scene thinking that you know everything and all of the knowledge that's been in the universe for your skill sets, you're a master of. It doesn't take long for you to realize that might not be the truth. Well, what I'm saying with imposter syndrome is not that you should go about acting as if you know everything, but there are cases where being able to practice something really well will help to train your mind to become more accepting of the fact that, hey, you really are competent in this area. Have you ever heard the phrase, fake it till you make it? That addresses behavior. Now, there's a podcast we're going to talk about in just a minute, and through that podcast, you'll hear this really good quote. It says, feel the emotion, fake the behavior. And what this means is that while we might appear in our behavior to be doing things correctly, underneath we might still have that emotion that's kind of holding us back. So if you can actually get to grips with that emotion and feel it, sit with it, address it, now you can begin to understand where is that emotion coming from. And until you're comfortable addressing the emotion underneath, you're only going to be trying to fix the symptoms rather than the underlying root cause. Now, there's one way that I've found I can overcome imposter syndrome quickly, and that's by using something called the third agreement. You may have heard of this book here called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's a classic text on personal improvement and development. I recommend it to everyone. Now, in this book, we talk about something called the third agreement. Oh, someone's at the drive-thru. More on this in a second. Let's go see who's here. Hey, look, it's Dave Pryor. How you doing,
Vic.
Dave?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, good. So I'm doing a video on imposter syndrome, and you recently did a really excellent interview as well. I'm going to share people the link to that. Talk about Chris Hagnegi and social engineering.
So social engineering has been a part of what I do since I was a project manager. When I was trying to figure out how to get better at working with people, all you're trying to do is get people to do stuff, but not in a manipulative, negative way. Like, I want to motivate people. He's got a whole thing in his latest book, Human Hacking, about how every interaction should leave the other person better than they were for having spent time with you. And I totally agree with that. But all those tools that can be used to manipulate people for bad reasons can also be used to motivate people in positive ways. So I look at my job as, I have to invest a lot of time, and I have invested a lot of time over the years in studying those practices. So, learning about body language, learning about, reading Paul Ekman, learning about micro expressions and things like that. But I just wanted to check in because I have felt for a long time like this wasn't a thing before. And after the interview with them and Dr. Abby, I finally went and looked it up. And that was the thing that I sent to you.
Yeah, she had a quote in that interview. It was, feel the fear, fake the behavior. Mm-hmm. When you're dealing with imposter syndrome, I think it's important, as she said, and Chris said as well. It's a great interview. I recommend everyone go and listen to this. It said to do the behavior, you're practicing the behavior, and that's fine, but you have to really get in and get in touch with and understand, like, why are you afraid? Get in touch with that emotion. Until you deal with it, you're only fixing the symptoms. You're not addressing the underlying root cause. But by practicing, by doing the behavior and over again, you're tricking your brain into thinking that, I am competent. I got this.
I think the story I always tell, for me, being a dysfunctional Irish Catholic, I just ignored the emotion stuff and just power through. But when I was trying to learn how to be a public speaker, I remember the first time I spoke was at a PMI conference in Scotland. I was terrified. And I just remembered this line from a David Mamet movie called Heist with Gene Hackman. And this guy asked Gene Hackman, he's like, well, you're really smart. You solved this problem. He's like, I'm not that smart. The guy said, well, how'd you solve the problem? He said, well, I just imagined I was somebody smarter than me and I did what that guy would do. And I was like, wow. So I was about to go up and talk at a conference, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pretend I'm me 5 years from now. I'm going to go be that guy for 15 minutes. And that was how I taught myself to be comfortable public speaking. I mean, you're always nervous, but
so what takeaways would you have? Sorry to cut you off there. I love that story. If you're working with a scrum team, then what takeaways do you have? Or maybe you're coaching a scrum master or a product owner, someone like that. What would you do? How would you implement imposter syndrome by name to a group full of people or someone you're coaching?
I tend to just be really open about that. I find for me, like, the best way to disarm it is to be honest with people and to say, like, look, I don't totally know what I'm doing here, but I'm trying. And if you work with me, we'll figure it out together. I think, and maybe I don't know if it's always the right thing. It's definitely not the right thing for everybody. But for me, taking that approach of kind of taking the wind out of my own sails first makes it easier for me to feel okay if things go a little bit clunky. Other people I know try to just get through on bravado or get bigger. For me, it's important to acknowledge when I'm not big, when I'm feeling kind of small.
Yeah.
I can feel safe in feeling small if I let people know, I'm vulnerable right now. If you want to kick me in the head, you're going to be able to do that, and I can't stop you. But that would be not nice,
So being open, showing your vulnerability, and modeling those behaviors and letting everyone else therefore know that it's also a safe environment where they can try to take risks and won't get punished for failures or being somehow insufficient in their own mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
For now, I'm going to let you get on your way. I'm going to go wrap up the coffee shop, and maybe I'll see you at the Drunken PM bar down the road.
That would be very cool. Thanks.
See you, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was fun. I love it when visitors come to the drive-in window, and Dave Pryor is one of my best friends here. So, thanks to Dave for stopping by and helping out with that question. Before we left, I was mentioning that one tool that you could use that I recommend is to read up on the classics. This one here, the 4 agreements. There's an agreement in here that I think is pertinent to imposter syndrome and dealing with those emotions. And it goes like this. This is the 3rd agreement, which is don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth. We could swear they are real. So when it comes to working through things like imposter syndrome, one simple way to deter those feelings of insecurity or fraud is to consider asking questions. Validate the assumptions that you have. Ask someone, is that true? Or what could I do in this case? Or how could I do that? Chances are you're not the only one who's got those questions. And by modeling the behavior of courage and curiosity, you're empowering the rest of your team to share those same qualities as well. Take that step. Be a leader. Don't assume. Hey, we're going to wrap it up here, but before I let you go, just a few quick reminders that if you're looking for the Advanced Scrum Master class, you can find out all the information, all the upcoming courses I've got listed on the website, onlinescrumclass.com. When you sign up, use the promo code COFFEE24 for 35% off any ticket. Also, if you are interested in getting your hands on a copy of this, the Agile Coaches Toolkit, you can go to the website, agilecoachingcards.com, and find out more information, sign up for the pre-order, etc. I've gone through about a quarter of this deck already in these videos, and I intend to go through every single card so that you could benefit from the items in the toolkit without actually getting your hands on this copy. You can also go to the website, agilecoffee.com/toolkit, and you can see all of these tools mentioned there as well. Finally, before I wrap up, I just want to say how much I've enjoyed being your barista in this space. Now, I'm saying that because I've got quite a surprise in store, but you'll have to come back for the very next episode so you can see what's going on with the film set. Meanwhile, if you have any questions about imposter syndrome, the toolkit deck, anything that we've done here, leave a comment below. I love reading your comments. If I can also ask you to like and subscribe, that would help out the channel immensely. Well, that wraps us up here today. So this is your barista Vic signing off, and once again reminding you to enjoy your coffee with friends.